morning, people. I just got back to Birmingham after speaking on stage at the National Rejoin March, and I want to share with you why I went and how I messed it up. Now, before I show you my speech, keep an eye in the bottom right-hand corner because that'll give you an idea as to roughly how many people I'm speaking to, and we'll get back to that later.
I've learned a lot in the last 7 years. There's this idea that Remainers think we all know everything. I didn't. I had no idea how Brexit would affect Northern Ireland. I didn't understand austerity, regional inequality, two major factors behind the desperation that led to the Brexit vote in the first place. I grew up with this naive idea that all our politicians were trying to help us. But Brexit opened my eyes. Because in 2018, the government's own official experts, it was leaked documents that showed that no matter what version of Brexit they negotiated, it would make us poorer. And that's how Brexit really broke UK politics, because our politicians, they're not experts, they're not economists. Boris Johnson studied Greek poetry at university. So when they're experts, when they're economists, be it the IFS, the OBR, the Bank of England, all say that Brexit will make us poorer and is making us poorer, the politicians have no reason to believe that they know better. So by going ahead with it, they're deliberately hurting a population that has been through 10 years of austerity already.
Now, I would love to stand here and tell you that I absolutely nailed that speech, but I missed out the entire middle section. I printed out 2 copies of that thing the night before, had one in my pocket, one in my bag, and yet when I got on stage, had the microphone in my hand, I thought, I've forgotten to take out my notes. Nah, I got this. Spoiler alert, I did not have this. So here are the examples that prove that our Conservative politicians know that by continuing with Brexit, they're deliberately hurting us. First, we have Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch talking about the car industry.
Brexit was more traumatic, I think, for this sector than many others.
Science Minister George Freeman.
And I think we're now in that very difficult bit where the costs are obvious.
So you agree with Chris that it is costing?
I think
it's that we are paying the cost of Brexit in our food bills?
I think it has had some cost.
The posh version of Slenderman, Jacob Rees-Mogg.
That if you look at small deliveries of things like cheese, you were talking about 71% increase maximum level on the retail price.
Tory MP and board member of Vote Leave, Bernard Jenkin.
But we're losing people from London permanently. They're going to take up residence in other European countries with European citizenship because they can't pursue their careers. By staying in London. It's about British citizens taking up citizenship in other countries because their career opportunities are so limited compared to what they were.
And of course, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak talking about how Brexit has affected our exports.
So why have we got the significant reduction in trade intensity that's stayed low, whereas others have come back?
Yeah, as I said, without a doubt, we're changing our trading relationship with the EU, and that means a different set of controls and things that people will have to do, and that will obviously have an impact, and that I'm sure is a big part of the reason why this is happening.
And all these politicians are just saying this as if ruining our economy is acceptable behaviour.
That's what broke British politics. This idea that it's okay to deliberately hurt your own people. And they're only able to do this because of our ridiculous voting system that gives majority control to a party with only a minority of the vote. And that's why it should be the top priority for every single person here to make sure that when Keir Starmer comes to power, he gives us a voting system where every person's vote counts equally. That we have had enough of politicians who deliberately hurt us, politicians who make us poorer during a cost of living crisis. We can barely afford food, we cannot afford Brexit!
Now, on the size of the crowd thing, there were lots and lots of right-wing trolls and Brexiteers online saying that our crowd was small, but you saw the time-lapse video. It's obviously in the thousands somewhere, but that's kind of missing the point because regardless of how many people turned up to the protest, we're still the majority. The majority of the UK wants to rejoin the EU by a pretty long way now. So whether it's 5 people or 5 million, we're still just acting as a symbol of what the majority of the people in the UK want to do. But while we're at it, Brexiteers have been complaining about Brexit since 2018. Nigel Farage says it's failed. Boris Johnson called his own deal unfair. One of the members of the Brexit Party tried to take the government to the Supreme Court to say that this version of Brexit is worse than remaining in the EU. And yet, what's the biggest protest they've managed to muster up since 2019?
The crowd set off in the pouring rain from Sunderland in the northeast.
Yeah, I'd say Remainers are ahead by a fair way. It's almost as if, after 7 years, there isn't that much public desire to keep trying to make a success of Brexit, because ultimately we all know that we have to end up back in the EU, and that until our politicians realise that, they're going to keep deliberately hurting us. I'm Pemi, this has been F Politics, so politics doesn't F you. Have a great week.